Our commander for this deck tech is Ashling Flame Dancer. Legendary creature, elemental shaman, 4/4, 2 red and 2 other. You don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases in. That means you get to keep it even through your opponent's turns. Pretty sick. Magecraft, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, discard a card, then draw a card. This is the second time this ability has been resolved this turn. Ashling Flame Dancer deals 2 damage to each opponent and each creature they control. If it's the third time, add 4 red pips. This commander is nutty. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to get that Magecraft trigger to go off, casting them instants and sorceries and copying them. I'm going to get to the third ability resolution to add the 4 pips, but don't forget about that second one. That one's important, where Ashling herself deals 2 damage to each opponent and each creature they control. Could you imagine, I don't know, a basilisk collar attached to her when that fires off? Let's get into it. Starting with the 13 creatures, they are Neheb the Eternal, Birgi, God of Storytelling, and Stormfilm Artist. Neheb the Eternal is 2 red and 3 other for a 4/6 zombie minotaur warrior with afflict 3, and at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, add 1 red pip for each life your opponents have lost this turn. With those big triggers off Ashling's second ability, we're going to be able to add a lot of red mana in our second main phase, or post-combat, either way. Birgi, God of Storytelling's red and 2 other for a 3/3. Whenever you cast a spell, add red until the end of turn. You don't lose this mana as steps and phases. And just another way to keep getting more mana. You've seen her before. Stormkiln Artist, 1 red and 3 other for a 2/2 Dwarf Shaman. Stormkiln Artist gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control. Magecraft, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, create a treasure token. We'll be doing a lot of casting and copying them instants and sorceries. Next we have Gutter Snipe, Imperial Recruiter, and Treasonous Ogre. Gutter Snipe's 1 red and 2 other for a 2/2 Goblin Shaman. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Gutter Snipe deals 2 damage to each opponent. Just be getting value off of that. Imperial Recruiter, 1 red and 2 other for a 1/1 Human Advisor. When Imperial Recruiter enters the battlefield, search your library for a creature card with power 2 or less, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle. We can use this guy to go ahead and tutor up stuff like our Gutter Snipe or Treasonous Ogre, Stormkiln Artist, Storm Splitter, which he's in here. You'll see him, but it's really good. We can fetch almost any value creature we need. Treasonous Ogre is 1 red and 3 other for a 2/3 with the Throne. Pay 3 life, add 1 red mana to your mana pool. Need that little bit of extra mana? Go ahead and grab him out. Play him, grab him with Imperial Recruiter. He's a good guy. Then we have Runaway Steamkin, Torbrand, Thane of Redfell, and Harmonic Prodigy. Runaway Steamkin is 1 red and 1 other for a 1/1 elemental. Whenever you cast a red spell, if Runaway Steamkin has fewer than 3 +1/+1 counters on it, put a +1/+1 counter on Runaway Steamkin. Remove 3 of those +1/+1 counters from Runaway Steamkin. Add 3 red pips. You're going to be casting a lot of red spells, getting a lot of 1/1 counters, removing a lot of 1/1 counters in batches of 3 to add 3 red pips for more red spells. Torbrand, Thane of Redfell, 3 red and 1 other for a 2/4 Dwarf Noble. If a red source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage +2 instead. Ashling's second trigger, real nice, just adds damage whenever you do it. Harmonic Prodigy, 1 red and 1 other for a 1/3 with Prowess. If an ability of a shaman or another wizard you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. And guess what? Our commander's a shaman. We've got some other people that are shamans in here, specifically the Stormkiln Artist, which is a really good one to double up on. The Gutter Snipe doubles up too. It's pretty nice. Next up, Sulfim, Mayhem Dominus, Storm Splitter, and Glithorn Buccaneer. Sulfim, Mayhem Dominus, 2 red and 2 other for a 5/4 Phyrexian Horror. Source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent or a permanent opponent controls. It deals double that damage to that player permanent instead. Ashling's second trigger, please double it. Heck yeah. Storm Splitter, 1 red and 3 other for a 1/4 Wizard Otter Haste. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a token that's a copy of Storm Splitter. Exile that token to the beginning of your next instep. If you can't win to the other stuff I'm going to talk about, having a Storm Splitter when you start casting and casting and casting will definitely do it. Glithorn Buccaneer, 2 red and 1 other for a 2/4 Minotaur Pirate Haste. Whenever you discard a card, Glithorn Buccaneer deals 1 damage to each opponent. Pay 1 and a red, discard a card, draw a card, activate this ability. Only if Glithorn Buccaneer, I can't talk, is attacking. Glithorn Buccaneer's first ability line right under haste. Oh my goodness. Every time we're casting, we're discarding with him on the field. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Lastly, we have Kozilek, Butcher of Truth. 10 generic for 12/12. When you cast this spell, draw 4 cards. Annihilator 4. When Kozilek, Butcher of Truth, is put into a graveyard from anywhere, its owner shuffles their graveyard into their library. You may be asking yourself, why is Kozilek, this Eldrazi monstrosity, in this deck? Well, you're not gonna ever cast him. You're not. We just want him for the last line, wherever he's put into a graveyard from anywhere, its owner shuffles their graveyard into their library. Now, Ashling combos off with one other card, which you'll see, Fury Storm, which will allow you to literally draw and discard and loop your deck. Now, with Kozilek in the deck, we can infinitely draw and discard and loop and cast instants and generate mana. It's part of a 2-card win combo at instant speed, baby, but we'll get into that in a minute. For our sorceries, we have Mana Geyser, bonus round, and Crash Through. Mana Geyser, 2 red and 3 other for add red for each tap land your opponent's control. Generate us that extra mana, allowing us to cast and copy and storm off a little bit. Bonus round, 2 red and 1 other until end of turn. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, the player copies it and may choose new targets for the copy. This spell is great just for getting some of our value pieces off, just for getting some of our pop-up pieces off. Also goes in with that combo where you can find a way to cast it at instant speed to be able to double up all your mana generation loop in your deck. Crash Through, 1 red, creatures you control gain trample until end of turn, draw a card. It's real cool for our secondary win condition, which is where we buff up Ashling a whole bunch and swing in for the win. But other than that, it's just to draw us, the card, and then draw us a card, and then discard a card. Then we have Light Up the Stage, Renegade Tactics, and Ryle. Light Up the Stage, 1 red and 2 other. Spectacle, you can pay 1 red for this spell rather than its regular cost. If an opponent lost life this turn, exile the top 2 cards of your library till the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. This helps us if we're kind of low on cards in hand. We can get this out, exile the top 2. We'd have to draw and discard as well, but then we get options for the 2 more that are in exile for the turn. Renegade Tactics, 1 red, target creature can't block this turn, draw a card. If we're going for our secondary combat big Voltron win with Ashling, then this helps out a little bit. Other than that, it's just to draw a card to be card positive on the discard and get the triggers off of Ashling up. Ryle, 1 red. Ryle does 1 damage to target creature you control. That creature gains trample until end of turn. Draw a card. Once again, same thing as Renegade Tactics. Next we have Jessica's Will, Mythic's Mastery, and Crackle with Power. Jessica's Will, 1 red and 2 other. Choose one. If you control a commander as you cast the spell, you may choose both. Add red for each card in target opponent's hand. Exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. It's obvious why it's here. It's a commander staple. It really helps us out a lot because we get access to those extra cards. We get to draw the discard off of Ashling. We get to add red to be able to cast those exiled cards. It's pretty nice. Mythic's Mastery, 1 red and 3 other. Exile target cards, instant or sorcery from your graveyard. For each card exiled this way, copy it, and you may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. Exile Mythic's Mastery. Overload, 3 red and 5 other. You may cast the spell for its overload cost. If you do, change target and its text to each. We can select 1 key instant or sorcery that we need at a proper time, or we can just go grab all of them, start casting all of them, bring them back. It's friggin' awesome whenever you get to overload this with your graveyard full of instants and sorceries. Crackle with Power, 2 red and 3 X's, so X, X, X. Crackle with Power deals 5 times X damage to each of up to X targets. Now I will say you do have to pump a lot of this, or a lot of mana into this to be able to make it big damage. But if we're looping our deck and casting bonus round at instant speed, which we'll get to cast, what is it, the instant ritual that we can just loop over and over and over and over and over again and hold Crackle this whole time, and then just be like, okay, we'll cast Overmaster, which we'll get to make Crackle with Power uncounterable. That's right, we can make Crackle with Power uncounterable and then dump all the mana into it. That one would technically be non-instant speed because we'd have to stop the loop to deal the damage with Crackle with Power because it's sorcery, but it still works. Then we have Twin Flame, Overmaster, and Disrupt Decorum. Twin Flame, 1 red and 1 other. Strive, the spell costs 2 and red more to cast for each target beyond the first. Choose any number of target creatures you control. For each of them, create a token that's a copy of that creature except it has haste. Exile those tokens at the beginning of the next end step. What can I say? If you can pump mana into this, it's even better, but even if you can't, it can make token copies of our Stormkill Artist, our Imperial Recruiter, our Treasonous Ogre, our Gutter Sniper, our Harmonic Prodigy. Oh, if you can hit all of them at once too, if you can put mana into it, delicious. Overmaster, 1 red. The next instant or sorcery spell you cast this turn can't be countered, draw a card. At its worst, it's a 1 mana draw a card to trigger Ashling. At its best, like we were talking about earlier with Crackle with Power, it can make Crackle with Power or any other instant or sorcery uncounterable. Then Disrupt Decorum, 2 red and 2 other, goad all creatures you don't control. This is just in here, you know, kind of give some incentive at the turn that you need it to have your opponents attack each other and not you. Well, incentive, I mean force. Next we have Heat Shimmer, Ignite the Future, and Vandal Blast. Heat Shimmer, 1 red and 2 other, create a token that's a copy of target creature, except it has haste at the beginning of the end step. Exile this permanent, same thing as Twin Flame, but without the strive, but it's still good value. Ignite the Future, 1 red and 3 other, exile the top 3 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. Yes, next turn, you may play those cards. If the spell was cast from a graveyard, you may play cards this way without paying their mana costs. Holy cow, oh yeah. Flashback, 1 red and 7 others over 8. Oof, I mean, we get the card positive, we get to draw a discard with Ashling. Then if you do happen to flash it back, we can play those 3 for free. Vandal Blast, 1 red, destroy target artifact you don't control. Overload, 4 and 1 red to destroy all artifacts you don't control. Beautiful. Then we have Gamble, Ancestral Anger, and Fiery Confluence. Gamble, 1 red, search your library for a card, put that card in your hand, discard a card at random, then shuffle. So in here it's the only red tutor, and sometimes, maybe, just maybe, you'll feel like gambling a little bit. Ancestral Anger, 1 red, target creature gains trample and gets plus X plus O until end of turn, where X is 1 plus the number of cards named Ancestral Anger in your graveyard. Draw a card in here for the trigger and the card positivity. Fiery Confluence, 2 red and 2 other. Choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. Have it deal 1 damage to each creature, have it deal 2 damage to each opponent, or destroy target artifact. Destroy 3 artifacts, destroy 2 artifacts, deal 1 damage to each creature. You know, just mix and match for whatever situation you need it in and get that trigger. And for our 24 instance, we have Expedite, Bolt Bend, and Chaos Warp. Expedite, 1 red, target creature gains haste until end of turn, draw a card, give something haste, but ultimately we just want that trigger and a main card positive on Ashling's ability. Bolt Bend, 1 red and 3 other. This spell costs 3 less to cast if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, which your commander is. Change the target of target spell or ability with a single target. Help protect Ashling or some of your other key pieces a little bit. Chaos Warp, 1 red and 2 other. The owner of target permanent shuffles it into their library, then reveals the top card of their library. If it's a permanent card, they put it onto the battlefield. We could use it on ourselves if we needed to, just to get the last trigger from Ashling, or more prominently, we use it to get rid of an opponent's piece that he doesn't want to leave the field. Then we have Voltron Awakening, Seething Song, and Unexpected Windfall. Voltron Awakening, 1 red and 2 other. Put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your library, then draw that many cards +1. Just helps sift through some cards and maybe a land if we need it, but I highly recommend not using the land side of it. Seething Song, 1 red and 2 other. Add 5 red pips. This instant will help us whenever we loop through our deck and cast in bonus round with Invoke Calamity, which we'll get to here in a minute, to double it up, so that way every time we cast this when we loop we can make 10 red pips. Then Unexpected Windfall, 2 red and 2 other. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card. Cool, we're doing that anyway. Draw 2 cards and create 2 treasure tokens. Mana positive, card draw positive, Ashling trigger. Next we have Demand Answers, Still a Possibility, and Fury Storm. Demand Answers, 1 red and 1 other. As additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice an artifact or discard a card. Cool, draw 2 cards. Trigger, card positive. Thrill of Possibility, 1 red and 1 other. Additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card, draw 2 cards. Same thing. And Fury Storm, 2 red and 2 other. When you cast the spell, copy it for each time you cast your commander from the command zone this game. May choose new targets for the copies, and then the actual card, copy, target instant or sorcery spell, you may choose new targets for the copy. So this is the card I was talking about. You don't need to cast another spell before this. Like, let's say your opponent puts something on the stack. In response, you can cast Fury Storm. Fury Storm will make a copy of itself since you've cast your commander at least once. And then with the copy of Fury Storm on the stack, you use the copy to target the original, and then it'll make a copy, and then that copy will make a copy and target the original. That copy will make a copy. So what's happening is you're going to copy a bunch of times, and with Ashling's trigger, you're going to draw and discard a bunch of times, filtering through your whole deck, and then you'll hit Kozilek at some point, shuffle your deck back into your library, and just continue it on, and we can throw in other instants, like the Seething Song I was talking about, and I realized that bonus round is a sorcery, but we have another card in here that will let us cast bonus round at instant speed, right? So that way you can double up on all the mana production in response to your Fury Storms being copied over and over again. do that 4 or 5 times, loop in your deck, and you make infinite mana, you know. And then you can just, every time you loop your deck, oh, lightning bolt you this time. Okay, loop next deck, lightning bolt you again, loop next time, lightning bolt, loop, lightning bolt, loop, lightning bolt. See what I'm saying? Next we have Desperate Ritual, big score, and Wild Ricochet. Desperate Ritual, 1 red and 1 other. Add 3 red, don't have to worry about Slice Under Arcane. So this is going to be the main one that you're going to hit when you're looping, is to add, well, after you cast a bonus round, obviously at instant speed with the help of another card we'll get to. You'll add 6 red. We can just keep doing that over and over and over again. And yes, I realize that Seething Song is also a sorcery, but with this other card, we can cast it at instant speed, just like bonus round. Big score, 1 red and 3 others. Additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card. We're already doing that. Draw 2 cards to create 2 treasure tokens. Mana positive, treasure positive, well, mana positive, and card positive, my bad. Wild Ricochet, 2 red and 2 other. You may choose new targets for target instant or sorcery spell. Then copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. If somebody lets loose a one-sided board wipe or something like that, and you can also prevent targeting of your commander as well. Next we have Twin Inferno, Reiterate, and Flare of Duplication. Twin Inferno, 1 red and 1 other, choose one. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose 2 targets for the copy. Target creature you control gains double striking on the turn. Sick for what we're trying to do to get them triggers, copy and casting. And then the second clause can be used if we have to use our backup win con, which is pumping up Voltron Ashling to give her double strike. Reiterate, 2 red and 1 other with buyback 3. Choose target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. A copier with buyback. We get enough mana. We get that infinite mana loop going. We can just cast Reiterate over and over and over again. Copy something we want to. Flare of Duplication, like the lightning bolts. Flare of Duplication, 2 red and 1 other. You may sacrifice a non-token red creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So we can use this to go ahead and copy off other stuff. Copy some big plays by our opponents, and we can get it out for free. Then we have Increasing Vengeance, Tibalt's Trickery, and Pyronetic Ritual. Increasing Vengeance, 2 red, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. If this spell was cast from a graveyard, copy that spell twice instead. You may choose new targets for the copies. Flashback, 2 red and 3 others. So we're just using this to give more triggers, copy more spells, get more value. We can flash it back to copy it twice. Tibalt's Trickery, 1 red and 1 other, counter target spell. The rest of it, ugh, but you have to do it. Choose 1, 2, or 3 at random. Its controller mills that many cards and exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card with a different name than that spell. They may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then they put the exiled cards in the bottom of their library in any random order. Guys, we have to have the counter spell in red. Counter target spell, sick, in red. The rest of it, it will be annoying. I'm sorry, but we have to have the counter spell in red. Pyronetic Ritual, 1 red and 1 other. Add 3 red pips to your mana pool. This will be important whenever we're looping our deck because it's another one we can hit to add 6 after bonus round. Then we get to Invoke Calamity, Reverberate, and Return the Favor. Invoke Calamity, 4 red and 1 other. You may cast up to 2 instant and or sorcery spells with total mana value 6 or less from your graveyard and or hand without paying their mana cost. If those spells will be put into your graveyard, exile in them instead. Exile Invoke Calamity. This is the card I was talking about, Invoke Calamity. So make sure you have enough mana up to cast this after starting your Fury Storm loop. Wait for bonus round and Seething Song to be in your graveyard, or you get a card other than Seething Song. I just like to have the 10 right off the bat. Wait till they're both in your graveyard, loop enough times till they're both in there, then hit Invoke Calamity, and then cast Seething Song and bonus round from your graveyard, resolving, of course, bonus round first, so you can get the 10 from Seething Song, and then you're off to the races. Continue copying the Fury Storms, going off. You can hit the, there'll be exiled after this, so you can't do it again, but after this you can hit the Pyronetic Ritual, and then keep adding up mana, and then you can just hit the other damage spells we have in here, pump a bunch of mana into them, keep looping your deck. It's pretty sick. Reverberate, 2 red, copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Another one of these copy effects. Return the Favor, 2 red and 1 other in both abilities. You can either copy target instant spell, sorcery spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. Really handy. Change the target of target spell or ability with a single target, protection for your commander. And finally we have Might of the Meek, Will's Reversal, and Comet Storm. Might of the Meek, 1 red, target creature gains trample until end of turn. It also gets +1/+0 until end of turn if you control a mouse. Draw a card, sick for the trigger and the cheapness and the draw card, and then we can also give Ashling trample if we have to resort to the little Voltron kind of win. Will's Reversal, 1 red and 2 other. Choose target spell or ability with 1 or more targets. Roll a d20 and add the greatest power among creatures you control. 1 through 14, you may choose new targets for that spell or ability. 15 plus, you may choose new targets for that spell or ability, then copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. So you just kind of, you know, spell or ability that's going off that you don't really want to go off, you can kind of just choose new targets for it, redirect it, or maybe even copy it if you get lucky. Comet Storm, 2 red and X. Multi-kicker 1, you may pay an additional 1 any number of times as you cast the spell. Choose any target, then choose another target for each time the spell was kicked. Comet Storm deals X damage to each of them. So this is one of the ones that I was talking about. Once you build up all that big mana with that looping you're going to be doing, you can throw a bunch of mana into the X and then make sure, you know, you save 2 for the multi-kicker. You want to kick it twice so you can choose all 3 of your opponents at the same time, deal a bunch of big damage to them, you know, and then if it gets countered or somehow gets stopped, then guess what? You can just, okay, cool, it goes to the graveyard. I'm just going to keep a loop in my deck. I'll build all that mana back up, and oh, look, Comet Storm again. I'll do the same thing again. You got another counter spell in hand? Didn't think so. Moving on to the 12 artifacts, we have Isochron Scepter, Soul Ring, and Swiftfoot Boots. Isochron Scepter, 2 generic imprint. When Isochron Scepter enters the battlefield, you may exile an instant card or with converted mana cost 2 or less from your hand. Pay 2 tap. You may copy the exiled card. If you do, you may cast that copy without paying its mana cost, just so we can get recursion of some of our most favorite and most valuable instants. Soul Ring, 1 tap, add 2. Sick, we need it for mana positivity. It's awesome. Swiftfoot Boots, 2. Equip creature has hexproof and haste. Equip 1 protection for Ash. Up next we have Lightning Greaves, Quintus Spike, and Basilisk Collar. Lightning Greaves, 2. Generic equip creature has haste and shroud. Equip 0 protection for Ashling. Quintus Spike, 3. Equip creature has Death Touch. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses half their life. Rounded up, equip 3. So with this, we can equip it to Ashling with Death Touch. Her secondary ability will trigger off and she'll hit each opponent and every single creature they control, and all their creatures will die because it says that Ashling is dealing the damage and Ashling has Death Touch. Whenever she deals combat damage, you can get her through. They lose half their life. Rounded up is pretty sick. Basilisk Collar, 1 generic equipped creature has Death Touch and Lifelink. Equip 2. Same thing as the Quintus Spike, but this one also gives us Lifelink for whenever her second trigger fires off. You will guaranteed every time get at least 6 life when her second trigger fires off and you have the collar equipped to her, because you'll hit each opponent for 2, 2, 4, 6, and then forever how many creatures they control, they're all going to die and you're going to gain 2 life per creature. Pretty freaking sick. Next we have Extraplanar Lens, Mana Vault, and Pyromancer's Goggles. Extraplanar Lens, 3 generic imprint. When Extraplanar Lens enters the battlefield, you may exile target land you control. Whenever a land with the same name as the exiled card is tapped for mana, its controller adds 1 mana of any type that land produced. Yes, the snow-covered mountains are back. And if you didn't know, the reason that we use snow-covered mountains is because their name is Snow-Covered Mountain. So whenever you imprint a snow-covered mountain under Extraplanar Lens, only you will benefit because you have snow-covered mountains and not regular mountains. Unless, of course, somebody else is running snow-covered mountains, which would be weird. Mana Vault, 1 generic. Mana Vault doesn't untap during your untap step. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may pay 4. If you do, untap Mana Vault. At the beginning of your draw step, if Mana Vault is tapped, it deals 1 damage to you. Tap, add 3 colorless. We just got this in here just to accelerate a little bit, get Ashling out a little bit sooner so we can start popping off. Pyromancer's Goggles, 5 generic, tap, add red. When that mana is spent to cast a red instant or sorcery spell, copy that spell and you may choose new targets for the copy. Just going to help us keep casting and keep copying and keep getting triggers, baby. And then lastly, for our sub Voltron strat, we have Whisper Silk Cloak, Luxodon Warhammer, and Glamdring. Whisper Silk Cloak, 3 generic, equipped creature can't be blocked and has Shroud, equipped 2. Give this on to Ashling to protect her and to make her get through. Luxodon Warhammer, 3 generic, equipped creature has +3/+0 and has trample and lifelink. Equip 3, this one also gives the lifelink, so whenever her second trigger fires off, you can get all that life. Also gives her trample, which is nice, powers her up a bit. Then the big one, Glamdring, 2 generic, equipped creature has first strike and gets +1/+0 for each instant sorcery card in your graveyard. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand with mana value less than or equal to that damage without paying its mana cost. Equip 3. You will have a ton of instant and sorceries in your graveyard. Ashling will be gigantic. You know how many times I've won through commander damage alone by bringing out a Whisper Silk Cloak and attaching it with the Glamdring attached to Ashling and just, okay, I'll swing in, bye-bye. For our 4 enchantments, we have Braid of Fire, Fiery Emancipation, and Fiery Inscription. Braid of Fire, 1 red, 1 other. Cumulative upkeep, add red to your mana pool, which means at the beginning of your upkeep, you'll put an age counter on that permanent. Then you'll sacrifice it unless you pay its upkeep cost for each age counter on it. However, you're not paying anything. Its cost, quote unquote, is to add a red pip to your mana pool. So for every age counter, you'll add 1 red pip. So the first time it's your upkeep, you'll get 1. Second time it's your upkeep, you'll get 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then so on. But thanks to Ashling, as long as she's still on the field, you get to keep these red pips, because normally they come in your upkeep, and then you move on and they'll wash out when you go to your main phase. However, because Ashling lets you keep it, you'll just keep spawning mana every turn, and the longer it's left to sit and the longer Ashling's left to sit, you'll just keep getting more and more red. Fiery Emancipation, 3 red and 3 other. If a source you control will deal damage to a permanent or player, deals triple that damage to that permanent player instead. Helps with Ashling's second trigger, helps with our little sub-Voltron strat. Fiery Inscription, 1 red and 2 other. When Fiery Inscription enters the battlefield, the ring tempts you. Okay, we aren't worried about that. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Fiery Inscription does 2 damage to each opponent, which is pretty sick, so we'll be doing that a lot. That'll grind down a little bit. And if you happen to have Fiery Emancipation out beforehand, 6 every time you cast an instant or sorcery spell, we're doing that a lot. Then lastly, we have Sneak Attack, 1 red and 3 other. 1 red, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. That creature gains haste. Sacrifice that creature at the beginning of the next end step. So we have this enchantment out here before we start doing our loop, and then at instant speed we can flash out like a Glinthorn Buccaneer with this card, and then just win off the discard damage alone. Then for lands, we have 27 snow-covered mountains. And Arena of Glory. Arena of Glory enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a mountain, which you will. There's 27 of them. Tap, add red, pay a red, tap, exert Arena of Glory, add 2. If that mana is spent on a creature spell, it gains haste until end of turn. And when you exert a permanent, it won't untap during your next untap step. So it's kind of like a stun counter, but we can get the mana out there and we can give something haste. Obviously, you can chill out on the snow-covered mountains a little bit, take a few of them out, add in some more utility lands that you think would be more useful, but I like this simple kind of approach here, so I can focus on all my instant and sorcery and copying and Ashling triggers. Alrighty, and that'll be it for this Ashling Flame Dancer deck tech. If you guys liked it, leave a comment down below. Please like and subscribe. Have any questions about any of the cards, throw them down in the comments and try to answer them to the best of my abilities. This deck is so much fun. It is a lot to keep track of, but it is so much fun, especially when you get to Voltron it out with Ashling and you're wiping all your opponent's boards every other turn and all kinds of fun stuff. If you guys have any improvements to the deck, also leave those into the comments and I will look at them and we'll pin them if they're a great improvement. We'll go ahead and pin it so everybody else can benefit from your wisdom. Thank you guys. Have a great day.